Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, or whatever it is. My name is Zulunungsang Lemtur. I come from a state called Nagaland, same with Dr. Kikon. And I belong to the Ao Naga tribe, and she belongs to the Lota tribe. But we are together called as the Nagas. And there are 17 tribes inside Nagaland, and the Nagas, we have comprised more than 40 tribes. Some are inside Myanmar, some are in Assam, some are in Arunachal, and some are in Manipur. But Dr. Kikon and I, we belong to Nagas of Nagaland. So there are Nagas of Nagaland and Nagas of the general population as well. So my name, Zulu means writing. Nangsang means giving praise. I was born in the end of August. It was on that month, my mom got her result that she has passed her graduation. Also, for our tribes, we have harvest festival called as the Sengermong festival, which falls on first week of August. After that, we have harvest festival. So it was on that month itself, we had a very plentiful harvest. So my grandfather said, we need to give thanks to God for the good result, but also give thanks for the plentiful harvest which came out from the land. So that's my name, and that's how our identity is somehow connected to that land as well. I know post-lunch classes, lectures, seminars can be tough. The food might lead to the food coma. And I'll try to, and adding to that, I'll try to enthuse you or seduce you with my lecture by starting with two myths from my tribe. So the first myth is, once all the creatures complained about the heat and brightness of the sun, so they told the sun not to return to the earth. And subsequently, the entire world became dark. At last, all the creatures realized their mistakes. Representatives of human, animals, and birds went to the sun, praying for forgiveness, but the sun refused. After a long deliberation, the rooster was unanimously, I would prefer the term cock, because when I grew up, we were told as cock, but today it has some other slang or other derogatory names, so we have to come to the term with rooster. So after a long deliberation, the rooster was unanimously selected to go and plead the case. On reaching the sun, the rooster addressed, Almighty Sun, you are the most powerful of God's creation, kind and loving. You do well to others without expecting any return. Now all the creatures have realized their mistakes and are genuinely sorry for their ignorance. We raised our voice against the decision, but being a minority, our voices were ignored. Now our tribes are vanishing because wild cats feast on us. And unless you return, all the creatures will die. Any delay will be a complete disaster. Each day I will announce your arrival in the morning. Hearing this, the sun started smiling and consented to return to the earth. And that's how, when the sun rises, the rooster crows. The second story. Once, Sungkitong, it's a name of a bird, called a meeting to discuss about the duration of the sun, about the day and night, where different opinions were shared. Some wanted day, some wanted night. No one gave a satisfactory answer. The owl said, if there is darkness, let there be only darkness. But if it is day, let there be light only. The animals and birds were not satisfied with the owl's opinion, so they struck the owl's head, which was round that time, but become flat. Later on, in the second meeting, after a long deliberation, Impang, it's a small bird, said, let there be light and let there be darkness, and let the process repeat every now and then. And hearing the wise suggestions, all the birds petted Impang, which was the size of a rooster but became a very tiny bird because of the constant beating and rubbing by the animals. So that's how the day and night came into existence. And this is our tribal myth, but the same myth is also shared by Dr. Kikon's tribe as well. That's what I read. So today, I'll try to divide my presentations into two parts. First, I will try to talk about indigenous spirituality, and passing on that, I'll try to suggest some pathways which we can take it forward for ecological care and sustenance. Though I'm an indigenous people or tribal person, most of my work confined to Christian theology because that's where my specialization is. But most of my research also focuses on tribal theology, indigenous studies, and climate change in eco-theology as well. So that's where I come in. So let us try to unpack what is indigenous spirituality. I believe each religious and spiritual traditions offer pathways for cosmic harmony, purity, and respect. And for the indigenous people, spirituality is the deeper dimension of the social, ethical, and religious principle that touches a community's life and governs it. And the most striking feature of this is their cosmocentric perception of spirituality. Indigenous spirituality emphasizes that creation is the central and all other beings are part in it. And they perceive the whole cosmos as one integrated and interlinked experience of spiritual connection to nature. And this provides a vision of life rooted in a harmonious relationship with nature's preservations and protections of people's culture. Hence, the organic connection of all realities is the core of indigenous spirituality. While indigenous spiritual beliefs might vary widely depending on the culture, region, history of different people. However, we can see that there are some common themes and principles that are shared across indigenous spiritual traditions. And today I would like to share some few perspectives from my Naga tribal perspective, and especially our tribal perspective, which I believe would help us to understand indigenous spirituality on one hand, and also about people's care for nature on the other. The first aspect of indigenous spirituality is the God-human world relationship. So the interrelatedness of God-human world forms the crux of tribal people's spirituality, because for them, people and creations are all interconnectedness, and any misuse and destruction of nature would affect and create chaos among the entire creations. And humans have no right to treat the earth as object to be used and exploited. So they have a holistic worldview that enabled them to perceive and experience divine in relation to nature and creations. So it is in this context and perceptions of God-human world that indigenous people look at the symbiotic unity of all creations. And this worldview can be supplemented in the understanding that all are one entity, interdependent and interrelated. And this holistic worldview understands that everything in the world is a part of larger dynamic system of relationship, and that all beings depend on one another for survival and well-being. And in this way, indigenous spirituality is ecocentric, centering on the idea that humans are not separated, but a part of creation and nature. And Nirmal Means, a famous Indian tribal scholar, opines that the living consciousness of nature, of spirit in nature, makes tribal perspectives on ecology different from other traditions or understanding of ecology. Second is the understanding of salvation and sin. For the Naga tribals, to have peace is to first make peace with earth and with community. And these aspects of communal indigenous spirituality focuses that all creations have their basic rights for existence. Therefore, relationship with fellow beings in creations are vital, and these relationships are meant to enhance human values, and seek fulfillment and redemption of all creation. Thus, for the tribal people, salvation has more to do with cosmic dimension because for them, salvation is communal. Indigenous people do not have myth and folklores in which humanity alone is saved while other segment of creation is destroyed. I think the story of the rooster calling out the sun is a classic example for that. And Wati Longchar, a renowned tribal scholar, also says that violation of cosmos, the flora and the fauna, becomes a violation of the spiritual values that holds the community together and which invites the wrath of God. So that's for human salvation is understood only in the liberation of the whole creation. And this organic understanding of salvation further underlines the importance of sin. So for the tribal people, the idea of sin is perceived organically. It has more to do with real life situation and is always relational, meaning that the sin affects the whole community, including the land, the supreme being, and the creatures. For example, if someone commits incest or does not practice religious ceremonies or taboo, such an act would invite the wrath of God on the battlefields and causing drought, poor harvest, and other calamities. So in other words, for the tribal people, sin encompasses the failure to foster right relationship with God, other person, and the creation. Thus, sin is relational. The third aspect is land as sacred and foundation of spirituality. So land is a very complex spiritual component and occupies a very central place in tribal people's worldview and spirituality. Because land for the tribal people is sacred. Land is not just a mere space, but a symbol of unity that gives them identity to the community. So it is impossible to talk about tribal people's society, culture, politics, religion, or economy without land, because everything revolves around land. And Naga tribal communities perceive land as mothers, and tribal people speak of how their foreparents emerged out of stones or out of a big hole from the earth. So for them, land is life, the source of origin, nourishment, support, and livelihood. And the whole of the land and ecosystem is home to all creations, and human beings are members in it, and people own the land with a wider understanding that it belongs to the Supreme Being. More importantly, they are also careful not to displease or lie against the nature or the land, and practices such as oath-taking by biting the land or earth illustrate the seriousness of tribal ethics and spiritual relationship with the world of creations. Also, indigenous people's identity is related to land, mountains, rocks, trees, and entire cosmos. Contrary to the colonizers' description of land as wilderness or an open space, land for the tribal people is a sacred place. It's their temple. It's their university. It's their hospital. It's the place of sustenance. It is a place where people congregate, worship, educate their children, and feed the people. And also, tribal rhetoric states the land is the Supreme Being's land. Or, do not be greedy for land if you want to live a long life. The land cries in the hands of greedy people. The earth is truth. Do not lie to the earth. Land is life. You can sell all other things, but not the land. You are a stranger without the land. So, land for the tribal people is an oasis of wealth and wisdom, and any devastations to land would amount to loss of identity, spirituality, life, resulting in the loss of family, clan, village, and also tribal identity. So these land-centered aspects of indigenous spirituality envisages unity and communitarian life, which calls for communion and solidarity irrespective of differences. So the land is not just a mere resources to be used, but a sacred entity that must be honored, protected, and cared for. And this deep relationship with land shapes many tribal spiritual practices and informs their approach to ecological stewardship and sustainability. The fourth aspect is creation-centered festival ceremonies. So tribal people also observe several festivals throughout the year, celebrations which are not only for eating, drinking, and merrymaking, but are profoundly connected to and centered on the soil, invoking blessings from Supreme Being to be kind, generous, and fertile. Because people cannot celebrate and worship Supreme Being without the creation, because their festivals, ceremonies, prayers, worship, song, and dance are directly related and centered on the land. And in this way, religious and spiritual life of the tribal people is impeded and directly rooted in land and creation. We can also see that indigenous spirituality also involves rituals and ceremonies that mark significant moments in life. Festivals which are used for sowing, for harvesting, and these ceremonies are expressions of gratitude, reverence, respect for the spirits of the earth, ancestors, and deities, and which serve to maintain harmony and balance between community and the natural world. So for the tribal people, one has to respect the land and observe Earth's Day and other religious observations. And during such periods, no one is allowed to spit on the earth, dig or pierce the land with any objects, or hunt. Hence, for the tribal people, moral and spiritual development cannot be separated from one's attitude towards land, and therefore humanity needs to be in harmony with the land. The fifth aspect is, actually it's 6 here, but in my writing it's 5, so I'm still confused. I have to go back to my drawing room to learn once more. So the other aspect is a tribal worldview and ethos. So worldview forms an essential and core aspects of tribal people's life, and they serve as the glue that connects tribal people with each other, their culture to the society, and the society to the world. And their worldview in a way accentuates and recollects aspects of one's life, such as social, cultural life, religious beliefs, and way of life. Thus, they provide the basis for one's thinking, perception, knowledge, and actions. And indigenous people's worldviews serve as the bedrock of their social norms, cultural customs, laws, socialization, and relationship with one another, and which includes creations through mediums like myth, folklores, proverbs, and tribal rhetorics. And these mediums expresses as symbiotic relationships of all creations with other creatures and highlight an aspects of integral connections of all creations. Furthermore, tribal traditions and cultures are also marked by communitarian values and ethos such as subaliba. Subaliba is a word from my tribe which means born. Suba means born, liba means to live. So it's a way of living. So it's more like a moral and ethical value. So some of the subalibas are to extend help to the poor, needy, neighbors, elderly people, strangers, willingness to share one's resources, to respect elders and parents, to be unselfish, to speak the truth, practice peace and justice, to observe taboos and religious ceremonies, to be hospitable, to observe the law and customs of the community, abstinence from killing or torturing living beings in creation, so on and so forth. So such ethos regulates the well-being of their existence, and survival also depends a lot on one's relationship with the communities, because for the tribal people, an individual does not exist in isolation, but in the larger web of human relationships. So for the indigenous people, peace is not an abstract entity or an individual paradigm. It is a peace lived with and within the community and with the creation. 6. Kinship. So tribal people maintain a close kinship between people and also ecological needs in such a way that both are protected and preserved, which were maintained through practice of Dabo, Dodem, and Sapat days, which are also called as the China days, forbidden days, and this acts as the governing and controlling principles. For example, it is prohibited to kill pregnant animals or set traps during spawning and breeding season. It is also taboo to kill animals when one's wife is pregnant, or it is forbidden to kill animals, work, or poke the land while observing Kina days or Sabbath days. In this way, creation is allowed to rest, recuperate, and rejuvenate itself. So it was felt that when the observance of tapo is neglected, the whole community gets affected. It is not only the human community who suffers, but the animals, plants are also affected. Hence, tribal spirituality emphasizes that the understanding of creation is central and all other beings are part of it. And let us look at what are some of the pathways that indigenous people can contribute towards ecological sustainability in creation. And the first aspect is on embracing indigenous wisdom and continuity. So the question is, whose stories, whose narratives are we reading? So for many centuries, colonization, Western Christian missionaries with its anthropocentric teaching and introduction of Western education has distorted and deprived Naga tribal people of their cultures, traditions, religious beliefs, and this has subsequently led to neglect and eventual loss of much of tribal way of life and culture. Anything that did not situate Western thoughts and Christian teachings was considered animist, uncivilized, superstitious, irrational, backward, and so on. And as such colonial narratives has greatly impinged Naga tribal cultures, wisdom, and tradition. Therefore, one need to look critically into indigenous cosmologies and worldviews which have shaped and sustained their lives and function as an integral part of socialization and community. As Marshall Peer argues, what is needed then is a way of thinking whose voices can speak or seek to approach indigenous peoples as repositories of knowledge whose ideas, perspective, and experience can inform or subvert colonial dominations and thereby denying autonomous voices. Also, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, in her essay, Can the Subaltern Speak?, raises a critical question that seek to break away from the narratives of the elites and perspective and ensure that we hear the voices of the marginalized community. The main concern for Spivak is to write the history from the other side and in doing so, restore the agencies of ordinary people. And I believe tribal people's representations are essential component in their quest for identity, rights, justice, and also environmental rights. Hence, it is vital that indigenous resources are tapped to seek ways in which they can aid in building communities and offer frameworks that foster mutual flourishing and interdependence of all creations. And since time immemorial, indigenous communities have maintained a deep respect for the wisdoms of their ancestors, which have been passed down from generation to generations orally, and also, more importantly, their knowledge about ecology and nature. Indigenous knowledge of plants and animal behavior, climatic cycles, the knowledge about when to sow the seed, or when is the time to cut the trees, or when is the time not to cut the trees, and also different agricultural practices that sustain ecosystem. So this knowledge is informed and often passed down that emphasize balance, respect, stewardship, ensuring that natural resources are used sustainably and regenerated for future generations. So indigenous knowledge supports sustainable agricultural practice such as agroforestry and controlled burning, which enhance biodiversity, preventing soil degradations, and also while maintaining the health of ecosystems. So incorporating indigenous knowledge into modern environmental policy and conservation efforts can significantly enhance ecological sustainability. The second aspect is on the interconnectedness of all life. So indigenous spirituality teaches that all forms of life, human, plants, animals, and even non-living elements like rivers, big boulders, mountains are interconnectedness. This belief promotes an ethical responsibility to care for all living things. So instead of seeing human as separate or superior to the natural world, tribal spirituality frames human as part of larger ecological web. And this worldview encourages practice to promote the well-being of the entire ecosystem, fostering sustainability and ecological care, and seeing ecosystem as interconnected and also sacred helps prevent overexploitation of natural resources. So sustainability becomes a natural resource of respecting all parts of the environment as integral to the survival of the whole community. The third is reciprocity and mutual care. As central principles in many indigenous traditions is the idea of reciprocity, and I think even in our previous presentation we have come across that. So this reciprocity is expressed in ceremonies offering sustainable practice, such as taking only what is needed and ensuring that the environment can regenerate. So the idea of mutual care encourages careful management of natural resources as well as a deep commitment to maintain balance within ecosystem. So practices such as rotational and shifting cultivation, sustainable hunting, the practice of dapo, dotem in earth states are guided by a deep understanding of nature's cycles and the need for reciprocity. And this ethics of giving back ensures that the ecosystems are not depleted, but allowing them to thrive even for future generations. The fourth aspect is spiritual leaderships and ecological stewardships. Tribal myth, folklores, and songs teach a unique role of each creature, and humanity possesses a special ethical quality, an ethical principle that makes a person selfless and guides one's way of life. But this makes the human distinct and different from other creatures. However, the possession of this quality does not imply the superiority of human beings over the other creatures, but this is a gift and responsibility bestowed on humans so that they may respect, care, love, and protect fellow creatures from destructions. This stewardship is not just a responsibility, but a spiritual duty requiring ongoing attentions and care for sustenance of environment and recreations. And tribal leaders such as shamans and elders often serve as the guardian of environmental knowledge and practices, preserving traditional ecological knowledge that is vital for sustainable living. So leadership grounded in tribal spirituality can inspire community-based conservation efforts, where spiritual leaders can also help guide decisions about the use of land, wildlife conservation, and natural resources management. This ensures that ecological care is integrated into cultural and spiritual life. The fifth aspect is sacred relationship with land and non-human beings. Many indigenous cultures with specific landscapes, river, mountains, or species, they consider them as sacred. These places and beings are not just valued for their material benefits, but they are seen as sacred and deserving of protection. The sacredness of natural world encourages sustainable practices, as harming the environment would be seen as disrespecting spiritual relationships. So indigenous spiritual practice give honor to sacred sites such as forests, rivers, or groves, and which contribute to the biodiversity and promotion of conservation of these natural resources. And especially in my village, there's a big rock which was considered as a deity and which has protected my village for a long time. So that area, that big rock, the whole forest area has been protected. And just recently, the government has also put up, especially between Ongma village and Longsa village, they have a green reservation which was put forward. And just 2 weeks ago, Chuchimlang village, which is a big village, so the Department of Forests and also the village council came together, their clan came together, and they have listed out 200 hectares of wildlife for protection. So like these are some conservation efforts like which we can also take forward in order to encourage preservation for ecological, spiritual, and also cultural reasons. And the last aspect is on sustainable resource management. So indigenous spirituality informs practices that contribute to climate resilience by living in harmony with natural cycles and maintaining a long-term perspective. tribal people have developed adaptive strategies for managing environmental change. These include water conservation, crop diversification, I think we have also discussed that about, and also sustainable forest practices, which reduces vulnerability to climate impacts, and integrating indigenous approach to resource management such as community-led water systems, sustainable farming, and forest management can enhance climate resilience, and this practice can serve as model for broader sustainable efforts, especially in the areas which are vulnerable to climate change. So, indigenous spirituality, to conclude, offers a vital pathways for ecological care and sustainability through its deep reverence for natural world and its emphasis on reciprocity, stewardship, and balance. The spiritual principles that guide tribal ecological practices provide rich resources of wisdom for addressing modern environmental challenge. By learning from and collaborating with indigenous communities, societies around the world can find sustainable solutions rooted in the respect for the earth and all for living beings. As such, indigenous spirituality is diverse and reflects the unique relationship of each indigenous culture has with the land, ancestors, and the cosmos. And at its core, it embodied principles of interconnectedness, reciprocity, and respect for the natural world, offering profound insights into living in harmony with nature. And I think these spiritual traditions serve as a guide for ecological care and sustainability, emphasizing the need to protect and nurture the earth for future generations. Thank you.